In the August of 1965, Pakistani forces infiltrated India-occupied Kashmir in what they called Operation Gibraltar. Their troops carried extra ammunition, and their attack on Indian soil led to war without a formal declaration, disrupting peace in the valley. On September 22, it ended after the intervention of the UN, and a ceasefire was formally declared the next day. But who won? Who really won the 1965 India-Pakistan War? There has been a debate over this for a long time now. To understand the situation, we need to turn the pages of history, and find out what really happened 52 years ago. And for that, we need to first look at both versions of the events, India's and Pakistan's. Let's look at Pakistan's version first. The Pakistan army conquered several areas of India, and when India was on the verge of being defeated, India ran to the United Nations to beg for a ceasefire. Thereafter, Pakistan returned all the conquered territories to India. Pakistan also blamed that Hindus staying in West Pakistan, their true loyalties lay with India, and that they would send their savings back to India, thus harming the economy of their country. And here's India's version. In a fierce battle, the Indian army reached close to Lahore. The hostilities came to an end with United Nations intervention. Although India could face the Pakistan army, but in 1965 because of poor economic conditions, this war could have added to India's problems. Now look at a few neutral versions, and research findings from other parts of the world, that could shed light on the outcome. According to the Federal Research Division of the U.S., the war would have ended in India's favor. The war was militarily inconclusive. Each side held prisoners, and some territory belonging to the other. Losses were relatively heavy on the Pakistani side, 20 aircraft, 200 tanks, and 3,800 troops. Pakistan's army had been able to withstand Indian pressure, but a continuation of the fighting would only have led to further losses, and ultimate defeat for Pakistan. Similar was the report of Arif Jamal, a New York Times correspondent, who wrote a book called Shadow Wars. This time, India's victory was nearly total. India accepted ceasefire only after it had occupied 740 square miles, though Pakistan had made marginal gains of 210 square miles of territory. Despite the obvious strength of the Indian wins, both countries claimed to have been victorious. Many other reports suggested the same thing. Pakistani forces had managed to capture an area called Kimkaran, but they were pushed back by Indian troops, who managed to reach the outskirts of Lahore. The ceasefire was accepted on the 22nd of September, and the war ceased on the 23rd of September. The Tashkent Agreement was signed by Arab Khan and Lal Bahadur Shastri in the January of 1966 to formally resolve the war. So whose mission do you think was successful? Losses were much heavier on the Pakistani side. But the UN called for a ceasefire, and there was no victor. But if you think about it, Pakistan's aim was to conquer a large part of India's territory, but they did not. While India's aim was to repel their forces, and India did. So whose mission do you think was successful? Maybe what they say is true. In war, there are no winners. If you also want to know about India-Pakistan War of 1971, you can watch from here. And subscribe our channel.